In the quiet town of Homo, Florida, a little girl lived a simple, happy life with the people who loved her most. 9-year-old Jessica Lunsford was the kind of child who filled every room with light, sweet, soft-spoken, and never seen without her favorite purple dolphin. Her home was warm, safe, and full of family routines that made her world feel protected and predictable. But in February 2005, that sense of safety was shattered. A convicted sex offender was living only a short distance away. A man who should never have been free. A man who had slipped through every safeguard meant to protect children. And one night, he found his way into Jessica's room. The crime that followed devastated her family, horrified the nation, and exposed massive failures in the system meant to keep predators away from children. This is the story of Jessica Lunsford. Jessica was a third grader who lived with her father, Mark Lunsford, and her grandparents, Ruth and Archie. Their home was loving, calm, and full of structure. Mark worked long hours, and while he was gone, Ruth and Archie cared for Jessica the way only devoted grandparents can, reading with her, helping with homework, making sure she always felt safe. Nothing about the Lunsford home felt dangerous. It was the kind of neighborhood where children rode bikes in the street and families waved from their driveways. No one imagined that danger was so close, or that a predator was living just yards away. The predator was a 46 years old, John Evander Cui, a registered sex offender with a long history of crime involving children. He had moved from state to state for years, quietly slipping through gaps in the system. Despite his record, he continued living among families who had no idea who he really was. On the night of February 23, 2005, Cui found an unlocked door at the Lunsford home. He entered quietly, moving through the house until he reached Jessica's bedroom. She was asleep. She had no warning, no chance to run. Cui threatened her into silence and took her from the only safe place she knew. Over the next 3 weeks, he kept her hidden in a nearby trailer. Only 150 yards from her home, Jessica suffered repeated assaults and unimaginable fear. She was just 9 years old. Then, March 19, 2005, Cui took her life. He wrapped her in plastic, placed her in a shallow hole beside the trailer, and buried her alive. When investigators later found her body, they discovered that she was clutching her little purple dolphin, the one comfort she had left in her final moments. Jessica's death shattered her family and broke the heart of a nation, and when detectives looked into Cui's past, they discovered the truth. The crime should never have been possible. He should have been monitored. He should have been restricted. He should never have been near children at all. But the system failed, and Jessica paid the price. When deputies first arrived at the Lunsford home, it looked like a simple missing child case. There was no forced entry and nothing obviously out of place. Jessica's room looked untouched. Her pink hat sat neatly where she last left it. Her purple dolphin was nowhere to be found, a detail that wouldn't make sense until much later. But the more detectives searched, the more troubling the situation became. There were no footprints leading away from the Lunsford home, no signs that Jessica had wandered off, and everyone who knew her said the same thing. Jessica was terrified of the dark. She would never leave the house alone at night. So investigators turned their attention to the neighborhood, and one name immediately stood out: John Evander Cui, a 46-year-old convicted sex offender who lived extremely close to the Lunsford home. His trailer was only about 65 yards away, just steps from where Jessica slept. Cui had a long criminal history, including dozens of arrests and previous sexual offenses involving children. For years, he had moved from place to place, slipping through the cracks of different state systems, serving short sentences, and avoiding the kind of monitoring that could have stopped him. As detectives spoke with neighbors, they learned Cui had been seen wandering the area, acting strangely, and sometimes walking near the Lunsford property. Suspicion began to grow. Meanwhile, the search teams worked day and night. Volunteers combed the woods, field, and even empty lots. Flashlights lit up every corner of the neighborhood, but the days dragged on with no sign of Jessica. With that, fear spread quickly among parents. They kept their children locked inside as news already spread that there might be a predator living among them already. As detectives continued tracking Cui's movements, they discovered he had recently left Florida and traveled to Georgia. On March 12th, he was brought in for questioning in Augusta, but since he denied involvement and there was no evidence yet, he was released. 2 days later, on March 14th, investigators received permission from Cui's half-sister to search the trailer back in Homo sassa, the same trailer where Cui had been staying before he fled. What they found changed everything. Inside the bedroom closets, officers discovered a blood-stained mattress and pillows, which was later confirmed that the DNA belonged to both Jessica and Cui. That alone was the first solid evidence linking him directly to her disappearance. And finally, on March the 17th, Cui was arrested and charged with Jessica's murder. And the next day, March 18th, he confessed in a detailed recorded statement, and according to his confession, he entered into the Lunsford home around 3 a.m. Through an unlocked door, he woke Jessica and told her not to scream and let her out of the house. He took her back to the trailer where he was staying, which was only 100 yards away, and over the next several days, he repeatedly assaulted, kept her hidden, and even placed her in his closet while he went to work. Then 3 days after abducting her, Cui tricked Jessica by telling her he was taking her home, but instead, he placed her inside 2 garbage bags and buried her alive in a shallow grave near his trailer. When the news of Jessica's fate spread through Homo sassa, the entire town changed overnight. The streets that were usually quiet were filled with people crying, holding candles, and comforting one another. Parks, schools, and churchyards became gathering places where families prayed and held vigils, trying to make sense of what had happened. Parents began keeping their children inside, locking their doors earlier, and watching every stranger with suspicion. The horror that someone like Cui had been living so close to home left everyone shaken. Jessica's father, Mark Lunsford, stepped forward with a strength that was almost unimaginable, and despite his grief, he stood in front of camera and spoke about his daughter, spoke about her kindness, gentle nature, and the innocence she carried with her everywhere. He also described the pain of losing her, but made it clear that something has to change, which made him push better protection laws for children and demanded answers about why a convicted sex offender was able to live in a neighborhood without proper monitoring. His voice grew louder than the tragedy, and soon the entire country was listening. When Cui went to trial, prosecutors presented a mountain of evidence. They showed forensic results, witness statements, and the long criminal history he had managed to hide from the community. Experts explained step by step what Jessica went through, painting a heartbreaking picture of the days she was held captive. The courtroom sat silent as these details came out, and many people struggled to hold back tears. Mark Lunsford took the stand and spoke through his pain as he described the last time he saw Jessica alive. Every word was heavy, but it reminded everyone of exactly who this case was about. A little girl who deserves so much more. A little girl who was meant to be safe in her neighborhood. The jury didn't take long to deliberate. The evidence was overwhelming, and the conclusion was clear that Cui was found guilty of first-degree murder, kidnapping, sexual battery, and burglary. He was then sentenced to death. It was a punishment that could never bring Jessica back, but it stood as a strong message that predators who harm children will face the full weight of justice. In the years that followed, Jessica's name became a turning point in child safety across the United States. Her death led to the creation of the Jessica Lunsford Act, a law designed to increase penalties for sex offenders, improve monitoring after release, and strengthen rules about where they can live. States across the country began adopting similar laws, each one inspired by Jessica's story. Her pink hat, her stuffed purple dolphin, and her bright smile became symbols of innocence, reminders of what every community must protect. Jessica never asked to become a national symbol, and she never knew the changes her story would inspire. She was simply a little girl who loved her family and wanted to feel safe in her own home. But because of her, countless children gained stronger protection. Her legacy became one of action, awareness, and change. Even though her life was tragically short, what she inspired continues to save lives today. Jessica Lunsford was only 9 years old, but her impact reaches far beyond her community. And her story is a reminder that vigilance saves lives, that justice matters, and that every child deserves protection. Although Jessica's life was far too short, her legacy is powerful, lasting, and also impossible to forget. If you are moved by the story of Jessica, kindly share your thoughts in the comment section. Share and make sure you turn on your notification button for more real-life stories. Thank you for watching. See you soon.